Welcome, everybody. This is Denny with Wisest Truths, my YouTube channel, which has been kind of quiet for the last, 2 years or so. And I decided to do a few more interviews. And in particular, I'm interested in people who found Get Wisdom. And joining me today is Gifford T, who is, we're kind of living in the same part of the world out here on the West Coast. He's in the Bay Area, and I'm a little bit north. And we met a long time ago. And so I'm going to let Gifford tell his story about discovering Get Wisdom and Karl Mollison and all of that, and what's happened and why. Thanks for doing this. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome. Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, it was actually 5 years ago this month that I discovered you and Karl. This is today's April. What is it?
It's the 15th. It's
tax day, right?
Yeah, extortion day. Yes.
Extortion day, right? April 15th, 2022. So it was in April 2017 that I discovered you and Karl, and it was from a tweet from Michael Salla.
Oh.
And it's funny because as I traced it back in my mind, it kind of started with Bernie Sanders back in 2015 when he was running for president. And I heard about him and I started getting excited about him and was listening to everything I could find and reading everything I could find. And so I got involved in some Facebook groups that were supporting him. And some of them were kind of like meditate for Bernie groups, like kind of the more esoteric folks that were more spiritual inclined. And so I got involved with some of those groups and I was thinking, oh yeah, we could visualize him winning and, doing everything we could and all that stuff. And one of the people on there kept saying, you should check out Gaia TV. And I kept ignoring it and finally like, okay, I'll check it out. So I looked up Gaia TV and there was this thing called Cosmic Disclosure. I thought, ooh, that sounds right up my alley, because I had always been a space nut ever since I saw the first moon landing. Whether that was real or fake, we're not sure yet. I was 5.5 years old and I was immediately entranced and I thought, I'm going to be an astronaut and everything. I was totally geared to being an astronaut and everything was space related. UFO related. I saw a couple of UFOs when I was one when I was 8 years old, and one when I was in Boy Scouts, probably about 13 or 14, and totally believed in aliens. Was into Star Trek, all that stuff, and so I saw Cosmic Disclosure. And I thought, oh yeah, I got to check this out. So I dove in there. David Wilcock and Corey Good. And, they started talking about this thing called the Secret Space Program. And I'd never even heard of that, but I was totally into the real space program, what I thought was the real space program, NASA and all that stuff. And I thought, wow, secret space program, what could that be? And so I was totally into that and listening to Corey and hanging on his every word. And I was just believing it all, thinking, wow, this is incredible. This has got to be the real thing. I don't know why, I didn't have any real critical, because I was thinking, well, there's plenty beyond what we think of as real, the mainstream. So why couldn't this be real?
Right.
So I was totally into that. And then, so through that, I saw William Tompkins. He was on the show. They interviewed him. Right. They talked about him at least. And then they had Michael Salla on. So I got introduced to who Michael Salla was.
Okay.
And XO News. And, I watched some of that stuff. So I was just digging into anything I could find. And so one day, in April 2017, I just had this thought like, I wonder what Michael Salla is tweeting about today. So I checked into his Twitter and there was a little tweet that said, channeling of, there was an article by Duke Brickhouse in XO News. And it said, this is a review of a channeling of Rico Bada by Duke Brickhouse. Channeling by Karl Mollison. Use your discretion. That's what it said. And ooh, this sounds fascinating. And I knew who Rico Bada was, thanks to Cosmic Disclosure and all that stuff. Michael and Bill Tompkins. Okay. So I knew who this guy was. So I'm like, ooh, this sounds really good. So I went right over to your channel and checked it out. And I remember my first impression was that both you and Karl were very genuine and authentic and sincere. Just your tone, you seem very serious. And as Karl always says, we're in earnest about this mission. and I could really sense that. And so that really made an impression on me. So I listened, and it was fascinating. I just listened to the channeling yesterday just to kind of bone up on.
Oh, okay. Yeah, because that's a very early channeling. That's like amongst the first 10, I think, that we did.
It was the fourth one you guys ever did.
Okay, fourth, yeah.
Because you said on the channeling that you had first done Eisenhower, and then the secret agent, or what was it? Special.
He was in Eisenhower's
Secret Service.
Secret Service, Secret Service agent, which has a whole nother story behind it.
Right, but I know. I won't get into that.
Yeah.
But and then the next one I think was J. Allen Hynek, and then you did Rico.
No, it was Forrestal.
Oh, Forrestal. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Forrestal.
Yeah.
And so I'd heard of all of them, and except for the secret agent, of course.
Yeah.
And so I listened very intently, and it was fascinating. And it's interesting now to look back on it after having followed the channelings for 5 years. First of all, it was a very short channeling. It was only an hour long.
Yeah, those days are gone.
Including everything. It was like 2.5 hours.
I know. We can't make them short anymore. It's funny. We used to do like 10, 12 questions and get it in an hour. And now it's like 5 questions and it's 2.5 hours. It's like, it's crazy. Anyway.
Ask one question, like, was Bill Tompkins employed by you in the Navy? And the answer was, yes, that is the case. Nowadays it'd be, 20 minutes later, he goes into everything.
I know. Oh, gosh. Okay.
That was my introduction, and I was very impressed with your sincerity and authenticity. And it's funny now to listen back on it, because he talks about the Nordics, and he doesn't say that they're Arcturians, because I guess you guys hadn't discovered that yet. So It's interesting to see what the light beings will say, only as much as you've gone, as far as you've gone.
Right. What we've learned. Yeah,
what you've learned. But a lot of it, because one of the questions was kind of leading about, are the Nordics on the side of the U.S. and the reptilians, or were the Nordics on the side of the U.S. and reptilians were on the side of the Nazis?
Right.
Because that seemed like, the Nordics are the good guys, right?
Yeah, and that was kind of like what Bill was intimating.
Right. But then, even knowing what we know now, it's interesting to see how consistent the material has been with the light beings, because the answer was something like, no, that's not. Some of that's true that they were working with the military, but it's not really true that these are the good guys and the reptilians are the bad guys. They're both harming humanity, and none of the extraterrestrials are here to help us. And that was pretty shocking. So as I continued listening to the channelings, because after that, I just dove into everything you had, and I listened to the past 3 channelings that you'd done. I listened to the 3-part interview with Karl, which was really interesting. Lots of your other interviews with other people. I kept listening to Cosmic Disclosure. And then the more I listened to stuff on your channel on Why Is This True, and the interviews with Karl, the channelings, it was coming out that, well, no, the ETs are not really here to help humanity, and they're all against humanity. And that was in direct contradiction to what Corey Goode was saying. And I was pre-primed with Corey Goode before. I was on his team already. And really hoping for, the ETs are good and they're going to help us, and can't wait till disclosure happens and, finally all this comes out in the open. And then meanwhile, Karl's channeling these light beings, and they're all saying, no, they're not here to help us. And then it finally came out that they're actually planning to annihilate humanity.
Right.
And I was so conflicted that I didn't know, who's telling the truth here? They can't both be true.
Right.
And I was really conflicted. I remember it was about 6 to 8 months or so that I was struggling with this. And I was asking
still in 2017, or was it later?
This was in 2017, because I found you guys in April 2017, and then
it wasn't started in May of 2018.
Right, and I took the LHP course in February of 2018 with you and Karl in Petaluma. So it was I'm guessing about 6 months of struggling in my mind of well, how can this be true? Are the ETs really here to help us or not? And finally, I think it felt like just the weight of the truth and sincerity coming through Karl's channelings that finally tipped the balance for me. And I just kind of had to give up and say, well, okay, I guess, this feels like it's more true than Corey's story. And then as I listened more and more and understood that and how it was all explained through various channelings, it kind of made sense of the world to me. And the more I listened, it was both. I remember also listening to the Anne Robards channeling, the woman that was
that's still in my top 3 as far as just discovery, where we got a lot of information in one channeling, and you could really, it was impressive.
It was extremely disturbing and harrowing, because I believe that that's real, that humans are being taken to reptilian slave planets. And just the thought of how extremely lonely that would feel. I mean, nobody knows you're there. Nobody can get to you, even if they do. Nobody believes it,
right?
Even if they hear about it,
right?
And you can't be more isolated if you're a human being.
Right.
And so that channeling, it made me feel very sad, disturbed, but it also, I remember feeling very hopeful because of the solution. I don't even know in that one if the LHP was presented as a solution per se, but there was partnering with the divine.
Right.
I'm sure that was there, because I remember feeling very hopeful. It was very disturbing yet hopeful at the same time. And it just felt so true within me, all of that information. And the more I listened, the more it just made sense of the world situation, how everything is corrupted. Politically, all the gamesmanship, geopolitical stuff, now the war in Ukraine's been raging for 2 months as we record this. And it's just, pawns on a chessboard, and just moving things around in the world. And
with such low regard for human life or, human dignity, all that stuff is just marginalized. Every time you turn around, it's being abused. The human, the nature of humanity just bludgeoned into submission everywhere you turn. And all of human history has been like that.
Yeah. And what was also really hard to believe, and just even almost worse in a way, was that we found out that this is being done just for entertainment, basically, like just the depraved entertainment of the ETs, just playing games and for sport. And that often reminds me of a classic Star Trek episode. I think of so many classic Star Trek episodes when I'm listening to this, the one called Plato's Stepchildren, where these advanced beings are just manipulating Kirk and Spock and Uhura and Nurse Chapel, and they're making them dance and do things that they don't want to do, and they're just enjoying the spectacle of it. They just like manipulating them to show that they can do it. And that's exactly what the ETs are doing.
Yeah, it's very prophetic.
It was.
Yeah.
So I just, after those channelings, I just dove into everything you guys had, and slowly, like I said, the weight shifted in my mind of, well, now I really feel that this must be true, the dark ET agenda. And then we did find out later that, the other story was not true. And it's all part of, a general mind control manipulation of the Disclosure Project or Disclosure Movement. To make people complacent so that they think, okay, the ETs are going to save us and we don't have to do anything. So I remember feeling like after probably about 6 months or so, I was still trying to get the lay of the land, like what's really true, what's going on here. And then after a while, they kind of became a little bit repetitive, like the light kept telling the same story, basically. And then I remember feeling like, okay, I think I got the lay of the land now. And I understand that there's an urgency and that each of us has to step up and do something. And that's what was different for me too, is that I wasn't just a spectator. Like before then, I was just kind of consuming information of like the cosmic disclosure. Why is this true? Anything I can get my hands on, like what's going on in the world?
Like collecting comic books or something.
Yeah. As if just knowing all that stuff somehow was going to change things, And then, so this message of, no, we actually have a role to play. Each individual does, and we need to do something. I kind of felt empowered by that. It's like, okay, well, then now I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and get to work and do my part. And that felt very empowering. And so then I decided to sign up for the LHP.
Right. And you
course.
were amongst, what, 33 people who took the last class that Karl ever did in person.
Mm-hmm.
And
there were 2 or 3. He did one in Chicago, I know.
Yeah, he did. I think he did 2 in Chicago, and then
okay.
and then one out here. Yeah, and then I'm not really sure. He did 3 in Chicago. I think it was only 3 or 4 that he did. And
okay. I know Brian did one there in Chicago.
Yeah, Brian did one. Yeah. And Marguerite did one in Chicago. And so and there were smaller numbers, and we used the one in Petaluma as the basis for the online class, basically.
Right.
And actually, the video modules for that have never been updated, but the manual's been updated many times. Mm-hmm. And it's been, the LHP itself has been, I think, enhanced, upgraded, whatever term you want to use, over 20 times since 2018.
Wow, is it 20 times?
Yeah, over 20. I think it's 21 or 22, something like that. So he's never let that collect dust. Karl has.
Yeah, I can't believe it keeps getting updated. I keep thinking, okay, this has got to be the last one. I mean, how much better can it get?
Yeah.
How much more powerful can it get?
Yeah.
But there's, and this latest thing with the Extraterrestrial Council, that is fascinating.
Yeah.
That is a huge update.
It's a kind of like a refocus. It also made the LHP considerably longer.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's justified given the situation, because as each month goes by, we're not really seeing any significant improvement in the trajectory of the human situation on a global scale. And it's really hard to find. I mean, you could find kind of like individual areas where there could have been some healing done, or perhaps you could think of it in terms of like things that could have gone a lot worse that didn't. COVID maybe being one of them.
Right.
Maybe this war not going worse, like expanding more rapidly, involving other countries and stuff. But overall, we're not getting a lot of good news. I mean, it still seems very urgent, very pressing. So one of the things I wanted to ask you, we have, I mean, I interact with a lot of people learning the LHP. And of course, most of the ones that I'm interacting with these days are people who've just found us within the last few months.
Wow, that's great.
Some of them who the ET thing wasn't even on their radar screen at all, and so they're going to list. They're going to learn the LHP. They're a new LHP student, and then they get this thing about the ETs. And I wanted you to talk about that. You have a perspective on that, having been introduced to it maybe a little bit more slowly than a lot of people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. What exactly?
Well, I mean,
related to ETs,
sometimes I think about you and several others having the benefit of growing with this.
Yeah.
And seeing like the earlier stuff, and then going along with this as we learn things. And now we have people coming in, and there's already, I think we in December there was 5,810 questions asked and answered on the Divine Wisdom database.
Oh my God.
There's almost 200 channelings videos, almost 200, and probably over 100 webinars, supporter webinars and LHP webinars.
Yeah.
So that's what somebody's faced with as a new person coming to get wisdom.
Yeah.
All of this information, and it, I don't know what, I'm so, I don't really have a very objective view of it at all. And perhaps you don't either, but I mean, you could probably speak to that idea of like you having the benefit of finding us 5 years ago. Whereas a lot of people now, 3 months, and they're like, what?
Yeah, it's a lot to take in. I mean, like I said, even me, it took me about 6 months of constantly watching you and Karl every week to really wrap my head around the idea that all the physical ETs interacting with humanity are against us, and not only that, but planning to annihilate us. I mean, that came out at the LHP course, which was another shocking news. So I can empathize with people that are just coming into this now. It's such a huge amount of information and such a shocking paradigm shift.
Yeah, it's like somebody asking you, okay, you have to completely revise your worldview now in order to accept anything that follows that may be a benefit to you. It's like, well, wait a minute.
Yeah, that's so hard to swallow.
Right.
Yeah, and I was kind of drip fed this all along the way.
Right. You are already accepting of the possibility of ETs as a young person.
Yeah.
Whereas a lot of people don't have that. They just like the ETs. They never really figured in ETs as being part of anything that was going on with humanity. Right.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. That's why it seems like it's such a small slice of the population that could even fall into the group that could accept this. Because okay, ETs are real. Maybe you believe that if you're a small minority, but they're not good, and they're all here to harm us. And God is real, and we need to partner with God to get rid of the bad ETs before they annihilate us. I mean,
yeah, that's a lot to digest.
Ridiculous thing you could imagine. So, yeah, what to say? Just take it slow as much as you can. Take whatever you can and digest it at your own pace.
Yeah.
There's
one of the things that I've kind of entertained a little bit more seriously lately is that the introduction to a lot of this, maybe the best venue or the best approach was just through the healing aspect.
Yeah.
Because through the healing, then it kind of reinforces the idea that, well, this is real. Even the bad parts is real because I can tell the healing is real. Someone did a session for me, or I learned the LHP, and now I see changes, and this is, my hip doesn't hurt anymore, and my dog doesn't bite anybody, or whatever. There's little lists of things that people can create around the healing experience, and that kind of bolsters the idea that the rest of it might be fit the picture, that's being presented. Yeah,
that's a good point. Yeah, I guess I would say that in that aspect, whatever you can relate to the most, or what's the most digestible, start with that, with the easiest. Like if the healing is the easiest for you and leave out the ETs, then fine. If you're really interested in the ETs and the space stuff like I was, it's always been fascinating to me, then dive into that. And
so if someone says to you, okay, so why should I believe that all ETs interacting with humans is bad? How come that is such a believable notion when we have in the world that we live in, we have good people and bad people, and why shouldn't it be that way with the ETs too? Why is this
right? You would think so. I mean, I asked myself that question too, and you would think, well, okay, there's evidence of them being here in documents and scriptures and all sorts of things for thousands of years. Well, if they're so good, why haven't they helped us all of this time? I mean, look at all the wars and stuff that have gone on through human history. I think some people might say, oh, they stopped some nukes from going off or something. I'm not sure what the deal is with that particular incident. It's probably in the database somewhere. But yeah, like I think Brian was saying, where have they been all these years? If they're here to help us, well, what are you waiting for? There's been so many chances to improve things here. So that would be one thing.
I'll play the devil's advocate. Well, maybe the idea is that they haven't helped because we're not ready for the help, and we need to work out our own karma a little bit before we step in.
Right. Yeah, I've heard that too.
So it's kind of like an honoring of the free will, right? Kind of thing.
Yeah. So if they're just letting us develop, well, how much more developed do we have to get? I mean, we're going to kill ourselves off, supposedly, if it's we doing it, before they're ready to come in. I don't know. I'm not sure if I can offer any really excellent suggestions. It's just, for me, I wanted to believe that. And nothing was happening. They weren't coming in and helping
us.
us.
Oh, you wanted to believe that there was a positive ET contingent that was waiting in the wings. Okay, all right.
Yeah, I really did, and that's I think why I was so into Corey's message. Like, oh yeah, he's saying the same thing. He's validating that, and I can't wait for it to happen. And I think that's still going on, obviously.
Oh yeah,
but I think the opposite made more sense to me. That there's so much manipulation going on, that just seemed more true to me. I know I can't prove this. I can't offer anybody any evidence.
I know.
Nobody can.
The evidence is circumstantial. It's like you have to use deductive reasoning and like a process of elimination to really, for me to ferret through all of this and make a coherent argument. But it's not proof. It's
right.
It will be. I don't think.
I mean,
one of the things that really stand out for me is like Pol Pot, Stalin, Hitler, Genghis Khan. I mean, there were some figures and episodes in history that defy any kind of explanation given what we know about humans and, what works, what doesn't work, that kind of thing. And these scenarios of it's called democide, it's like death by government, where your own government creates some situation where it goes into a phase of wholesale slaughter. The best estimates I've seen, like in Soviet Russia, was 67 million of their own people. Wow. 67, and more conservatively, it's 20 million. But still, it's hard for any of us to conceive of a million people. Put a million people somewhere and try to visualize that. It's almost impossible. Yeah. It's a huge number. Yeah. And but yet this is what's gone on all through history. Something's wrong. Something is really wrong. Right.
Yeah, because if you look at in disasters, natural disasters, the natural human response is to go help other people, help other humans. You don't even know them. People are flying down to the hurricane zone to help folks. Right. I mean, that's just human response, the compassion that's there.
Right. So we're talking about a very abnormal thing here in terms of human behavior, psychopathic, sociopathic. Something where there's a huge disconnect. Forget God. I mean, forget God for just talk about from the humanistic perspective, right?
Yeah.
And what are natural tendencies to do. You see a baby, you smile. You see a puppy, you smile. There's all this goodness that kind of just wells up naturally, Mm-hmm. So, I mean, I think that's something that I would try to point out, for people to think about as they look at what Get Wisdom's trying to say about, why is the world so messed up? Why is the world so messed up? And
then you get into the mind control aspect.
Oh, yeah.
I hadn't really thought of.
Yeah, I want you to talk about that too.
Because that's something I hadn't really heard of or known about. And you talked a lot about that. And then you had Jian Liang, I think is her name.
Yeah.
And I read some of her ebook about the secret space program and a mind-controlled slave.
Yeah.
And all this stuff was so bizarre to me. But then you start looking at it like Project MK Ultra and and then I think of things like the Bourne Supremacy movies or the Bourne Identity, the Bourne series.
Yeah. Right.
And then the MAP, the Mercenary Army Program, which is a creator's name for the secret space program, and those recruits. And that's stuff Corey Goodin talked about some of that stuff too.
Right.
In the 20 and back. And being mind controlled into and then put into time traveled into the future, or you're working with these ETs for 20 years and then you're brought back to the same moment where you left without knowing any of it. So all of those things started coming out in the channelings and in the Get Wisdom information. And so I started looking into that. And then it started making even more sense. And you can find information about this elsewhere too, all over the place.
Yeah.
If you Google MK
there's
Ultra,
the Andy Carroll story.
Right. I read that or listened to it. That was incredible.
Incredible. And we found out that most of it's true. There's a few little things that are described from his perspective, or for the interviewer's perspective that kind of doesn't really come out in the wash. But by and large, most of that stuff is true, which is just perplexing, but it helps people to understand how mind control could be so successful not just from the human perspective of things, but when you put the ETs in the picture, and they have a whole gamut of tools and methodologies that we don't even know about. We don't know.
Right.
We have an inkling for it, but they are the ones, one way or the other, who taught the humans how to do it to humans, and they did started doing that thousands of years ago, mostly with this trauma-based mind control stuff, where they get the little children, and they do awful things to little children, and they cause these personality splits, and then from their perspective, the world's your oyster. You can get them to do anything, and this whole idea of humans just being disposable, and that's the premise on which all of this operates. Because if somebody doesn't work out, they just kill them.
Yeah,
and they have a use for that too. So I mean, that's going to go to good use too. So it's very dark, and but it's something I recommend frequently because it helps put a magnifying glass on it so you can see, with a little bit more clarity what's going on. This mind control thing is really important because it's used everywhere.
Yeah, and so that with that aspect of it, you think about, okay, they're using, I mean, it sounds so ludicrous and so paranoid. It's like, okay, so the ETs are mind controlling all of humanity to make war on each other. Yeah, right. Put your tinfoil hat on. My tinfoil hat, where's the tinfoil hat? You believe all this stuff?
Right. And it's good that you point that out, because a lot of the people who are accepting of things like mind control and MK Ultra and stories like Andy Pero and what was her name? Thanks for the Memories. Sue Ford,
Bryce,
and others. And but then they get wisdom and they go, well, the whole that's just the surface stuff. We're talking about the ETs having been the cause, even including COVID. So the whole thing becomes so even for the alternative folks, this is too far out there.
So the ETs did everything. Is that what you're trying to tell me?
Yeah,
that is what we're trying to tell you.
Yeah. So it's really hard to get credibility in that in that scenario, and again, that's what kind of bolsters my argument, which I think others have made prior to me, is that leading with the healing is probably the most productive thing to do, because that's going to be the proof in the pudding, and that also helps with I think the credentials on Karl's side of the picture, because since the day I met him in December of 2015, his channeling work was primarily in service to the healing. The channeling series is interesting. It's revealing. It's probably helpful in some cases. But most of the channeling that he did on his own was to find out how he could improve the healing modality, the LHP. So when a new idea or suggestion would come in, that's where he spent his time doing the transcripts and the channeling and stuff. And like, okay, we're going to make the LHP better, right? And he mostly did what he did with me to get the word out about Get Wisdom. That was our, we were doing the Hallmark greeting cards with the channeling series, trying to get people, to take an interest in Get Wisdom, which was primarily about healing, because that's the only way that we're going to get out of this nonsense.
Right. That's the other portion that's really important, is the
healing our
answer,
right?
Healing the perpetrators. Yeah. Yeah. And that goes to a very deep spiritual level, I think. I mean, I just thought of Jesus on the cross, asking God to forgive the people that are crucifying him. I mean, that's such compassion. And when you think about the ETs, and then when you learn more of the background of the fallen angels and the fall from grace and the story of Lucifer, and I know Brian and Karl have done several shows on that on the radio show, Voice America. Then it makes more sense. Those are more pieces of the puzzle, like, because I like to find out, like, what's the biggest picture of this? I was like the big picture. Where did this really come from? So a separation from the divine by the fallen angels into a more selfish mode, and then aggregating more power to themselves. And it's a slippery slope, so that it becomes more and more self-centered, going down the path of sociopathy or psychopathy, becoming a psychopath.
Yeah.
Then this all makes even more sense. Like you are so disconnected from love, over billions of years, that all they can do to find any kind of pleasure is make others suffer. And then if you think about how horrible that would feel to be in that state, then you can have compassion for them and have the willingness to ask the divine to help to heal that. And then by healing our ET perpetrators who are like this, then just enough so that they'll change their plans so that they don't annihilate us all before leaving because they want to get out of here. That's all we need. I mean, it's a lot, but that's it, just to get over the hump so that they don't annihilate us. But I guess my point is it helped me to feel the Get Wisdom information helped me to feel more compassion for the ETs that are so disconnected.
Right.
They're the ones that need the healing the most.
Right. So how is healing going to get them to leave?
It's going to soften their hearts just enough so that they don't want to kill us or don't need to kill us. I mean, some of the things that are now in the LHP are asking the ETs that are in the light to help their brethren, to give them ideas of, well, if you just leave the humans here, you can have them when you come back to play with and toy with and manipulate. So if we can heal them enough to lessen their hatred just enough so that they can just leave and say, just forget these humans, let's just get out of here, then we'll have a breathing room to continue our own healing.
So it's kind of like a variation on the annihilation plan. So they want to be done with humans. Traditionally, they would just kill all the humans or whatever civilization they're dominating, and that's the way they're done with it. And they would do like a resource extraction, then they go off and do something else because they're controlling the whole galaxy. Is that correct?
Right.
That's our understanding.
Yeah. Yep. The ET Alliance, the Anunnaki, the Reptilians, the Arcturians, and the Greys. Yep. Running the whole galaxy, just like Star Wars, except it's real.
Yeah.
The evil empire.
So the other thing we learned through the Karl's channeling work was that humans were created to solve the problem with evil. So can you talk about that? What's your understanding of that? How does that figure into the?
That's another mind blower, that humans are a divine creation, as were the Anunnaki and the Reptilians and the Arcturians, but they were all corrupted by the fallen angels, dark spirit attachments over eons. And so things kept getting corrupted in the galaxy by those ET races, who were taking over and oppressing. And so apparently humans were created as one last gasp of a divinely connected being to be able to partner with Creator, to ask for Creator's help in bringing healing to these other ET races who are destroying the galaxy or oppressing the galaxy. And it's only, apparently from the channeling information, only human beings who still have enough of a divine connection to feel that and ask Creator for help in healing the ETs, because they're so disconnected, they don't even believe there is a Creator or any divine. They can't feel love, so they can't help themselves. And if they annihilate humanity, there's nobody left, apparently, with enough divine connection to get this healing started. So it'll just be a black hole, and eventually they will destroy each other and themselves. And who knows, the galaxy may have to be restarted, and that could apparently affect the rest of the universe. I mean, it's hard to believe.
Right.
So that's, talk about a lot to swallow.
Right.
But apparently we're the last hope. Help me, Obi-Wan. You're my only hope. Sort of thing. Help me, human beings. You're my only hope. Yeah. So, it's up to human beings, and how few human beings are even going to believe this crazy story to do this. So It's up to the few folks.
Yeah, it's hard not to entertain the idea that things are going to have to get significantly worse to get people's minds to open up a little bit more. And really, they're kind of like two counter arguments or counter wishes, because in some ways, I know for myself, it's like if something gets dramatically worse, it's almost a good sign, because maybe that would prompt more people to kind of like reevaluate their real world view. But then on the other hand, it causes those kinds of worsenings actually cause suffering. And there's a lot of reason for the divine realm to hold that off, to make that not happen, just for the benefit of people in general terms, children, elderly, whatever, people that are kind of on the fence, because with something like that, you could push people either way. You could push them towards the divine, or you could push them further back into evil, because what happens in those circumstances, and what we're all trained to do, is respond in fear. We retreat to the ego and try to take care of our own, and our fellow human be damned. I got to get mine, because things are getting worse. So it's kind of it's difficult, because especially for people like me who are impatient. I don't really like waiting for the other shoe to drop. It's like you too. You've been at this for 5 years now, and so on the Get Wisdom side of things, it's growing, but you need some, and so what's the recipe here? And there's always that conflict of like, well, we already know that people who make themselves known in a big way for the light put themselves in danger, and of course the poster boy for that is John F. Kennedy. He tried to do a couple things that were on the divine side of the equation, and he paid the ultimate price.
Paid for it.
Yeah. And so that question, even though it's probably not accurate to put ourselves in the same category as John Kennedy, but that fact remains, is that if you're going to be pushing for something like that, you're putting yourself in the crosshairs. So that's the other thing. So what does Creator have planned for this idea that we need to partner with Creator and get a lot of humans praying, knowing what the problem is? It's a tall order, and it kind of, I always think about it's a timing issue. The groundswell is going to happen, so it can happen fast enough and not endanger a lot of people. I don't know.
Right.
I don't know. I don't.
Yeah. Who knows what's going to happen? I mean, I've also heard the channeling material that it's paradoxically a good sign that things seem to be getting worse, because that means that the light is actually winning, and the darkness is getting desperate. Like they've gone ahead into time,
which fits nicely with the whole white hat narrative for disclosure too. You see that a lot.
Oh, that's true.
Right?
Yeah.
Well, they're suffering now because they're being so extreme. Yeah. Right. So it can be a very confusing thing to stick your nose into and try to make sense of.
I know, and even trying to get more visibility for Get Wisdom, like you say, it's a tricky business, because you don't want to get too visible. You don't want to stick your head up too far above the trenches and get your head blown off.
Yeah. Well, and I think you've thought about that probably a lot, just because you've been willing, as demonstrated by what you do on Twitter and other social media sites. You're not afraid to associate your name with some pretty challenging material coming from the Get Wisdom side of things, right? So, I mean, you've thought about this. I mean, I imagine. I mean, I have, but I'm in a somewhat different boat here, because.
Yeah, I don't know. It just seems like it's do or die at this point. For humanity and the galaxy and possibly the universe, and even if you don't go that far, just for things in the world. And I think that this is real and that it can work. The LHP can work. And so, I mean, I think I'm just, all the information I put out there is mostly falling on deaf ears anyway. But it just seems like people are so close in a lot of ways. they're seeing the corruption, and nowadays the censorship is just unreal in Twitter and Facebook, and everybody who's trying to tell the truth about something mundane, the war in Ukraine, for example. And then getting banned off of Twitter for talking about a dissenting view. So people, it seems like they're close, and I'm just trying to help them over the edge to see
the bigger picture, right?
Yeah. But I can even see, whenever I put anything out there, I can just hear in my mind, they can't go that far. It's so ridiculous to go that next step, like, oh, ETs are doing all this? Give me a break.
Yeah.
Or praying to God to heal them is going to work. Who are you talking to? So, but I just do it because I saw a tweet by Michael Salla that led me in the right direction. There's probably going to be a few other people out there somewhere that might come across something that leads them in the right direction.
Right.
And it's kind of like being Johnny Appleseed. You're just planting seeds along the way.
Right.
I guess I'm not too worried about getting in the crosshairs because I think I'm a nobody. Nobody's listening to me. I'm not Elon Musk. I'm not somebody big and famous who's going to say anything. It all sounds so ridiculous anyway. Nobody's going to believe it. But those few other little people that are out in the world, like me, that might be looking for something like this, might see it and think, oh, wow, that makes a lot of sense to me. And then, one more person can start doing some healing work. It just makes a lot of sense to me. It gives me a lot of the whole paradigm of Get Wisdom that it provides gives me a lot of peace when I think about the world situation. I kind of feel like the eye of a hurricane that, so many people I see, in this whole COVID thing that's happened has really hurt a lot of people being isolated so much and, losing jobs and being depressed and the kids on Zoom and all this stuff. And with this paradigm that Get Wisdom offers, the bigger picture, I feel like I can be at peace with all of this and understand why it's happening. Who knows if it's true or not? I tell a good friend of mine, I don't know if it's true, but to me, it's just the best theory I've seen so far that explains the data. And if a better theory comes along, then I'll jump onto that one. But at the moment, I've stuck with this one because I was looking for everything that would explain what's going on.
Right.
Is it Corey Good story? Is it something else? There's the whole thing about pedophilia and save the children that are being kidnapped, and it's the deep state is doing it, and okay, well, that's got some traction, that's real to some degree, but who's behind that? So it just, the whole bigger picture, and it makes sense to me. It makes sense of the world. It helps me make sense of the world, which gives me peace and I think some equanimity in living in these times, as well as giving me something that I can do about it. It's empowering. Even if I only do one LHP a week, but I'm still saying the prayers daily, the readers' prayers.
How has your experience been with the healing aspect? Like with you doing LHPs, family members, yourself? How's that going?
It's been kind of difficult to tell how much effect it's having, because a lot of folks that I do LHPs for, I may not even know them. Some of them I do. Some I may see a little effect. I might not see any effect. And that's kind of difficult because, as we've learned from some of the channelings, that the symptoms are the last thing to go, because it's working from way back behind on karmic causes from possibly lifetimes ago. So it is a leap of faith, but I still do it because I believe that it works, that it's powerful. I have had a few incidents where things changed in people that I knew kind of dramatically. They're kind of far and few between, I have to admit. But I've also had a few incidents related to the divine, like little miracles, where Karl talks about miracles are small and personal. And I remember one of them was kind of funny, where I was listening to, I don't know if it was one of the prayer webinars or reading some of the stuff in the Divine Wisdom database from Creator. And I thought, okay, well, Creator, I was saying a little prayer as I was driving home. I would like to hear your name in some way spoken out loud, in the near future, just to, as a validation to make, to tell me that this prayer was heard. And so about 10 minutes later, I got home, and my stepson was there in the kitchen. I said, "Hi, how are you doing?" And he said, "I'm God."
Just like that.
He'd never said that before. I mean, he was just,
he
said, "I'm good, I'm God." But I thought, okay, thank you very much. And that was like 10 minutes later after I.
How old was he, or how old was he when that happened?
That was maybe a year ago. He was about 10.
About 10, okay. Because I tell people starting out with the LHP, and I say, sometimes it's hard to get you're trying to get your feet wet, you're trying to build up your confidence and stuff. And I say, I always say, do LHPs for yourself first. I said, yeah, sometimes it's a huge barrier for people because they think they need to do it for somebody else. And I said, no, it's okay. Just do LHP for yourself. You could be the only client. Just do it for yourself. Yeah. Get comfortable with that. Okay, so and sometimes that's not a barrier, And then the other one I say is that do it for locations, kids, and animals. Do LHPs for those three, and go ahead and make a business of that for a while, and then just pay attention, because a lot of times you get immediate feedback in those areas. Like in real estate, okay, there's an agent that's got a house. No one wants to go see the dang house. And we do it, and we've done this because my wife is a student too, and she does real estate. And we do a session for the house. Bang, it's in foreclosure. It's very quick. Okay, and the other one is kids, and so your stepson's a good example of that. You do an LHP for a kid because they just have fewer barriers. There's fewer. They're not packing around as much junk as adults. So a lot of times the evidence of something happened is more immediate. And then, of course, animals. Animals are great that way. Dogs and cats and horses and
Yeah. So that was a really funny one.
Yeah, that's great. And
I'm God. Oh, you're God. Okay.
So one other thing I want to talk about, and I don't know if you've encountered this. I have, but indirectly, and the cult thing. Oh, he's in the Karl Mollison cult. Oh, that's right. I heard about that guy. What's the deal with this cult? Tell me about the cult.
This is the best cult I've ever been in.
Okay.
Yeah, no, it's funny. You can't really talk about it because it just sounds so culty. But so I just don't really talk about it with anybody because I know how it's going to sound. So I just go about my business, and chat with the other folks in the LHP forums and stuff. But I mean, you think about all the mind control that's going on now. I mean, you just look around; everything is just crazy these days with the censorship and people saying crazy things all the time. And so, why wouldn't they think you're in a cult if you're doing something like this? It's so off the wall. But I just have to trust my inner wisdom and inner guidance that this feels right to me. I've had lots of little miracles, little signs pointing the way, like I just told you that one. It just feels like the right way to go in the world at this time, to help change things for the better. I mean, you don't have to look far to see that everything is really going to hell in a handbasket these days, and to have something that can tangibly make a difference, at least theoretically. I mean, I haven't heard of anything else that can reach this deeply, even theoretically.
Have you had any success stories, like where you introduced a friend or someone or a work associate or somebody or a customer or something to get wisdom, and they ended up being an LHP student? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, actually, I just thought of two people that I met on Facebook that just they resonated with it immediately. Like one guy in France that we actually talked on the phone. He was so excited.
Okay, I know who you're talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
Hold on a second. This is going to low power mode. Okay. You still with me?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah. So he just jumped right into it. It was right up his alley and just went gangbusters. And then another person, young man in Texas, and we talked quite a while. And I don't think he's been able to do the LHP yet, maybe for financial reasons, but he's still really interested in it.
Yeah.
So a couple of them. Yeah, it's kind of rare. I mean, even a close friend of mine,
it is
did
rare.
the LHP course with me. He couldn't swallow it all.
Yeah.
And I understand. It's like, I don't know, you have to be
ready.
A cat, I think.
Yeah, you have to be ready and you have to be a little bit hungry. It has to be something, a personal motivation, I think,
Yeah.
Something in your life that's really driving it. Yeah.
Yeah, and I was thinking, for me, it's just perfectly right up my alley because I've always been a space nut, and I've also been very spiritually inclined into the mysticism area my whole life. And so this just combines both of them, really. I mean, it's kind of like using the mystical connection to the divine to heal the ETs that are threatening humanity.
Yeah.
And even when I was a kid, I used to think about the earth as a globe with all the people as one. I remember in high school, I made a t-shirt that said "One planet, one people." So this is, I've always been thinking along these lines, and this just kind of encapsulated everything for me.
Yeah, that's okay. All right. So, and the other thing I want to say before we sign off here is that, you and I are kind of fortunate because I think, as far as I know, this part of the world still has the highest concentration of LHP practitioners in the Northern Bay Area, which is kind of weird, but it's true. I think there's about 12 to 15 people within a few hours drive of my home that are all LHP students, and I think most of those 10 or 12 are active in terms of they just didn't take the course and then put it on the shelf somewhere, which unfortunately does happen. In the class that we had in Petaluma, there was a lot of people like that in that class who just took it and they never really ran with it. And so, okay, is there anything else that you think would be good to include before we sign off?
Let's see. I'd say just look at everything that you can on the Get Wisdom website. Webinars are fantastic. The Divine Wisdom database, any channelings.
The radio shows. The
radio shows. Yeah, that's very good too. Yeah, Get Wisdom on
because they're
Voice
short.
America.
They're shorter. Yeah.
Yeah, those are very good. And you can look through all of the index of the shows, see what topics you're interested in. I think it goes back a couple of years now.
Yeah, it's 2019, and I'm slowly taking off the intros and the commercial breaks and the outros and editing them and putting them up on YouTube, Brighteon, Odyssey, Library, and BitChute. So you can find, there's about 50 of them on there now. I'm doing like 3 every weekend, so I'll be done in about a year. There's over 140 radio shows.
Wow.
Over 140. Yeah. So, and it's all topical, each show is topical. So they're different than the channeling series. And okay. Yeah. So
so just dive into as much as you want to, as you can digest. Don't overdo it.
Yeah, don't overdo it. And there's also the free ebooks. There's a whole bunch of free ebooks.
Oh yeah,
ebooks, one on channeling. There's one on prayer. There's one on the ET agenda.
New Age
practices. Yeah. So it's a
Creator speaks.
Yeah, there's a good selection of the kind of which is a good place to go if you don't want to spend 6 months watching all the media and everything. You just want to read a few short books and make a decision.
Yeah, I thought Creator Speaks was a good one. I read that early on. It kind of gives a good overview. Yeah, like a summary of what's going on.
Yeah,
as well as the ET agenda.
And one thing I want to say before we sign off, and it's kind of simplistic, but I think it's very important, and it also addresses this whole cult thing to some extent. And cults are usually centered around a person. There's a worship of a personality.
Oh, right.
So one of the questions I always say is like, Karl Mollison is a human. He's got faults. He's got, problems and situations just like everybody else. But he's either channeling Creator, God, or he isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of like the first question that for a lot of people who like to look at things methodically, you busy yourself with answering that question. Is he channeling God, or if he isn't? And if you come up ambivalent or no, then you really shouldn't spend much time on it, because then it's amorphous. It's like, you could be out there trying to do like a consensus reality or something like that. So try to answer that question for yourself definitively. Is he channeling God, or isn't he? And then move on from there. If the answer is yes, then you hit the gold mine, and there's a lot of stuff in there that's going to really benefit you and your family and the world over the long haul. But if you can't answer that question, or if you have answered the question no, then there really isn't not an argument for giving it much credence. So yeah. I think that's helpful. I hope it's helpful.
And just to see how the information lands with you.
Yeah.
Does it? Because it may have an inner resonance that it feels like it's touching a deeper place in you.
Yeah.
Or not. If so, go with it. If not, then it's not for you.
Yeah. All right. Okay. So I think we solved all the world's problems in just about an hour.
All right. As usual.
And so I really appreciate it, Gifford. You've been one of the stalwarts, and somebody's hung in there with Get Wisdom through thick and thin, 5 years. Yeah, and found us even before there was a Get Wisdom, which not too many people can say that. Yeah.
I lucked out.
Yeah.
I'm grateful for all the work that you and Karl and Brian do, and all the other LHP practitioners. So keep up the good work, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And thank you, Gifford. And I'll be back with another interview soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.